The Washington Post is reporting that the Justice Department Inspector General found evidence that an FBI employee may have altered a document concerning the court-approved surveillance of former Trump campaign advisor Carter Page, but says it did not impact the overall validity of the surveillance application. This allegation is reportedly contained in a draft of Inspector General Michael Horowitz's report, which is going to be released on December 9th. The FBI said that they were investigating Page because he had established relationships with Russian government officials in the past, including Russian intelligence officers. That goes all the way back to 2013. Joining me now is former CIA Director John Brennan, an MSNBC senior national security analyst. There's been so much talk, the president again today saying that he was wiretapped with no evidence of that at all. Carter Page was already a suspect figure for the intelligence community, going back to cases of his connections to Russia long before he was a Trump advisor. And now the issue here is whether he was properly the subject of a court-approved surveillance warrant.
Right. Well, as a U.S. citizen, if there was any effort to try to understand what Carter Page was doing, it would have been the FBI that was taking the lead on something like that. Right. If Carter Page's name came up in some type of intelligence community report or whatever, that would immediately have been shared with the FBI. But this report, supposedly that Horowitz is going to come forward with, if there was some type of modification, the question is, when was it done? Why was it done? And so the IG reports usually will take a very close look and use a microscope to look at these things. But I think we just have to wait for it to come out to determine exactly whether or not there was any wrongdoing whatsoever, or whether or not there was just some things that happened that, might not have been exactly the way they should have taken place.
And all of this is to try to either understand or undermine, depending on motivation, can't really say what, the origins of the conclusion back in 2016 that Russia was behind the meddling in the election.
Right. I think Fiona Hill had it exactly right yesterday, that continuing to try to propagate this narrative about Ukrainian interference in the election is just a way to help Russia's efforts to try to deflect the focus on them. The intelligence community assessment that was done in January of 2017, that was given to Donald Trump and to Barack Obama, clearly stated that it was Russia in a very systematic way and tried to interfere in the election and to try to advance the prospects of Donald Trump being elected, but also to bloody Hillary Clinton, anticipating that she was going to be elected. So there was no evidence that I ever saw that indicated that the Ukrainian government, Ukrainians, were involved in trying to interfere in the election. It was Russia.
Now, you were in government for years and years in many different roles. Can you imagine having to deal with a Rudy Giuliani as the president's personal lawyer doing this shadow diplomacy? But now we know that wasn't the shadow, that was the main act. Here's some of what happened with the two key witnesses yesterday, Holmes and Hill.
My recollection is that Ambassador Sondland stated, quote, "Damn it, Rudy. Every time Rudy gets involved, he goes and F's everything up."
I had already brought to Ambassador Bolton's attention the attacks, the smear campaign against Ambassador Yovanovitch. He then, in the course of that discussion, said that Rudy Giuliani was a hand grenade that was going to blow everyone up.
So you've got Rudy Giuliani doing all of this on the side. What message does that send to other governments? Because one of the things that really has caught my attention during all of this is Republicans will say, well, the Ukrainians got the money. They still haven't gotten the visit, but they got the money for the weapons. They got the javelins. But during that period when they didn't, 55 days when it was authorized but not delivered, everyone knew they weren't getting it. Everyone knew that the president was siding against this new president. He was weakened in his relationship with Russia, his negotiations ongoing. There was a hot war. People were dying on the front line. So there was an effect.
Well, there are two things from the testimony yesterday. One is that it's clear that by the comments of Fiona Hill, David Holmes, and others, that any claim of attorney-client privilege by Rudy Giuliani was laid to waste, because it's clear that he was involved in not representing Donald Trump from a legal, lawyerly capacity. He was involved in this irregular, or whatever you want to call it, channel that was trying to carry out this negotiation with Zelensky as far as getting this domestic political favor for Donald Trump. So Rudy Giuliani should be called up in front of the House or the Senate to testify, because there's nothing at all that is protected under attorney-client privilege. Secondly, it really makes, I think, a lot of countries wonder, who should they be listening to? Should they be listening to the authorized representatives at the embassies abroad and in the Department of State, or should they be listening to individuals who claim that they are representing Donald Trump and the office of the presidency and trying to cut these deals? And so it really, I think, undermines the credibility of the U.S. government and the U.S. government officials who are really trying to carry out national security in a very professional and honest way.
And Vladimir Putin is sitting in Moscow, and he sees that all of this is falling into place. Just the other day, he said, you see? He actually said, you see, now we know it was Ukraine, not Russia, responsible for this.
Unfortunately, all this fracturing that is taking place within the U.S. system of politics, I think, is something that Vladimir Putin was hoping was going to happen. And so I think he is sitting in Moscow looking at all the damage and the political damage, not just taking place in Washington, but the damage to the U.S. reputation worldwide. And so, unfortunately, I think Vladimir Putin has been quite successful in terms of trying to carry out this very subversive effort against the United States government, having someone like Donald Trump in the office who clearly is unable to carry out the affairs of state, but at the same time pitting us against ourselves, which is something that we really need to get beyond.
John Brennan, it's very good to see you. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Anna.
Especially after the last 2 weeks, your context.